It's been almost exactly 1 year since I started this channel and we've already hit 100,000 subscribers. This happened so much faster than I was expecting. The 100K part, not the 1 year part, although kinda that as well. Anyway, I wanted to do something special to mark the occasion, but it really snuck up on me pretty fast, so I'm challenging myself to make a game of some kind in just 7 days. Time's a-wasting, let's get started. Right, so 7 days is not a long time. So instead of making something from scratch, I figured I could make some kind of spin-off version of the game I made for my very first video here, SurTruck. Inspired by Vampire Survivors, it's a vehicle combat game where as you destroy enemies, they drop gold, you pick them up, you level up, and then you select from random perks to upgrade your truck. The game gets pretty silly as well, with all kinds of crazy melee weapons. People have been setting high scores that boggle my mind in the itch comments, and the game seemed to vibe with a lot of people. So there's some good bones on SurTruck to use as our starting point. But also I really like that because the game is already out, there's already like the real version of SurTruck. Maybe we could take the game and just make it kinda crazy and even a little bit broken. Like we can go just completely over the top with this version, and then, you know, if someone wants to play the actual balanced version, the original version already exists. I feel like it gives me permission to just go nuts with it. So the immediate idea that jumped into my head was, instead of just going and going until you set a high score, what if instead there was a goal you had to reach, and that goal was to blow up 100,000 cars, 1 car for every single subscriber. So I thought to start, let's just try making the cars spawn way faster, but also make them way weaker and just speed everything up. This is crazy. And I thought, this is it. It's done already, ship it. And then I got to the end screen and realized that I had only blown up like 3,000 cars after 5 minutes. So this is gonna take ages to blow up 100,000 cars. So doing a little bit of napkin math, even if we were destroying 1 car every single frame, so 60 cars per second, which is as fast as like this counter here that I've hopefully put on the screen, it would still take almost half an hour to reach 100,000 cars. And I don't think the counter even does it justice, because this is just a number counting up, but in reality, this is an explosion plus a sound plus a screen shake. And yeah, even with it that crazy, it's still gonna be like a half-hour long game to play, which is gonna get pretty old pretty quick. And now I'm like, this is maybe gonna be a little bit harder than I first thought. So yeah, 100,000 is big. In fact, having 100,000 of anything in a game is kind of a challenge. So what if instead of blowing up 100,000 cars, we had it that you had to collect 100,000 gold to beat the game? We could change the little gold bricks. We could actually make it like little YouTube gold play buttons, which would be kind of cute. We could also try, instead of the gold coming out of the enemies, we could just scatter it through the level and put absolutely heaps of it everywhere. If I put them just on the roads, then all of a sudden it kind of becomes like a weird game of Pac-Man, where you're driving around scooping up all the dots. And this definitely gives the game a different vibe, and we can get to 100,000 much more efficiently, I guess you would say. But even still, 100,000 of anything is still a lot. So I needed to do a little bit of work to make the game more performant to be able to actually run this by only rendering the gold that was immediately around you and doing some tricky things where it's actually using an object pooler instead of creating and destroying hundreds of thousands of objects. But you kinda get numb to it really fast. So to combat this, I made it so you start off with only a few gold on the screen, and then one of the perks that you can select every time you level up massively increases how much gold is spawned in the level. So that way, once there's heaps on the screen, you kind of appreciate it more because you remember it when there was barely any. And this is all neat, but so far all we've done is change the gold a little bit. How do we kick this up to the next level? Well, the other big thing in the game that we can change is the enemies. So what if we did something like every single time someone comments on this video, they become an enemy in the game. That way, the game becomes like this living, breathing thing that is directly connected with the video. And this is all possible through the magic of the YouTube Data API, where we can pull down comment information for a specific video and then feed that into the game. This seems really cool. I love this idea. I hate this idea. So there's actually two main problems, one which is technical, but the other which is a design problem. So on the technical side, although it's pretty easy to get the comment information from the YouTube Data API, there is a limit to how many times you can do that. And it would actually be really easy to blow past this limit. And then obviously if that happens, the entire game doesn't work. Like one solution would be to build like a proxy cache. So we put something on AWS pulls down the YouTube data. The other problem is just a design issue. Right now we have 100,000 gold to collect, and then say there's only 100 comments on the video, so that's 1,000 gold per enemy. How are we going to balance this and make it compelling? Like either there's going to be no enemies to kill, or you're not going to be able to get enough gold to level up. It's just always going to be in like a massively unbalanced state. And it's now obvious to me why the gold or whatever you use to level up in these kinds of games always comes from destroying the enemies, because it becomes kind of a little self-balancing cycle. I probably should have realized that before now, but here we are. Okay, so at this point we're up to day 4. And I've achieved basically nothing. I'm basically back to where I started, but it's okay, we still have time. One of the big secrets about being an efficient game developer isn't about getting a lot done in a short amount of time. It's coming up with smart designs that give us really good bang for buck, really good return on investment. So let's simplify a bunch of things. First up, the gold goes back to just spawning when you destroy enemies. There's no need to reinvent the wheel here. And at this point, I've kind of removed every mention of anything to do with the number 100,000, but hey, if I stop mentioning it, maybe people won't notice. But I still really love the idea of if you comment, you become an enemy in the game. And it's a really nice way to directly involve the community, because that's become a bit of a theme on this channel. But I'm going to ditch the entire YouTube API idea altogether, which means having to update the game manually. Now, obviously I can't update the game every single time anyone comments, and realistically, I could probably do it once per day for a limit of about 10 days. Like at some point, I'm gonna be away from the computer, I'm gonna have a weekend. But a message of, I only update this once a day is kinda lame, right? So what we wanna do is come up with a very deliberate design that makes it feel like by updating once per day, it actually adds value to the game. It doesn't take away. It's a deliberate choice, not a limitation. So after a whole day of head scratching, this is what I ended up with. Our main menu structure is made up of daily challenges that unlock once per day. Each challenge is made up of having to destroy a set amount of enemies to pass it. And obviously that number of enemies is going to be how many comments are on the video at the end of that day. So instead of the game just getting harder and harder the longer it's up, we actually have a set of challenges where each one is harder than the last. And you can kind of go back and play the early challenges when it's maybe too easy, and then there'll be some in the middle, and then there'll be some really hard ones at the end. Like maybe this video goes nowhere and barely anyone comments and the game will just be nothing. Maybe, although I very much doubt it, it goes absolutely crazy like the Fruit Ninja video. If that was to happen, there would be so many enemies in the game that I'm pretty confident it would crash everything. So that sounds fun. And now that we have these discrete challenges, we can also go a little bit further with the whole theme of making it a bit off the chains, right? So each day could also have a twist. Like maybe the controls are different on one day, or maybe the physics are like deliberately broken, or there's something weird about the enemies. I also really liked the idea of having everyone's names above the cars, but that was going to actually be a surprising amount of work. Totally possible, but again, just kind of exceeding the scope of what I wanted to do for this. Oh, and this is a good time to mention that if you comment on this video multiple times, you will still only count for one enemy. I need to be very careful of YouTube's policy around incentivized spamming, so yeah, no spamming. I also thought this would be a good time to add a few different ways that people can become some of the more dangerous enemies, like the fast car and the garbage truck. And so I've just launched a Patreon, because Unless a sponsor is gonna drive like a dump truck of money up to my house right now, I would really rather be making content for people than for companies. There's an option that's totally free to join the community. And so this is essentially like joining a mailing list where you'll get like very occasional updates from me on what's up, but also it's really easy for me to get that list of names from Patreon and drop that into the game. So in this way, you can become one of the fast enemies with like your name above the car. All right, so let's get the menu working for the structure of the game. And this is pretty simple because I can reuse a lot of existing assets. There's also a bunch of structural changes we need to make to the game so that each challenge has a set amount of enemies that have to be defeated. And then we need to rebalance the gold and the level up and the perks and everything so it's all kind of working. But with all that set up, we're finally moving in the right direction and we can get to the fun stuff. Oh man, I'm like 70% of the way through the script and we're only just getting to the fun stuff. I hope this video has any retention at all, otherwise. All right, fun stuff time. Let's add some new weapons. We're going for easy to implement, high value stuff here. The first one is the skull. This is super basic. It's just a skull that orbits your car, dealing damage to anything that collides with it. It starts off super weak, but once you have a bunch of skulls and the damage is scaled up, it gets very powerful. Next up is a rocket launcher. So there was only one weapon in the game so far that dealt AoE damage, and that's really powerful here where we're gonna potentially have like thousands of enemies on the screen. So that's why I wanted to add this. So the mine, which is the current AoE weapon, is really just a hacked up projectile. So it was actually pretty easy to unhack this and then turn it into a sweet rapid fire rocket launcher. And again, once it's upgraded, it just gets crazy. I also reworked the mace, mostly in pursuit of making it way more performant, because the chain system was pretty sketchy and the game slows down with thousands of enemies. But also now, not only does it look a bit better, but it's way more usable. It's much easier to kind of whip the mace around with some level of precision. I also made a lot of changes to the existing weapons and perks. Mostly these changes were just kind of like taking the limits off them. So before there was like set limits for how much you could upgrade particular things, so stuff didn't just get crazy overpowered. Those limits just kind of don't exist now. So the game isn't gonna be like super balanced, but it should be just pretty fun. Just absolutely like nutty stuff going on. Oh boy, okay. Second last day, time to start adding those twists I was talking about earlier. The goal here is to make one simple, meaningful change to the game every day. So without giving all of them away, a few of the twists I added were like having a racing camera instead of a top-down camera, having deliberately broken car physics, having the entire game to have like an old-timey orthographic look. In one of the challenges, the enemy cars can't steer, which is actually harder than you might imagine. It kind of makes it more of a shmup game than a Vampire Survivors game. But yeah, there's a bunch of the other ones as well, and you're just gonna have to play to find out. Okay, so it's the last day. What we need now is a way for me to actually kind of release and update the game. I had originally planned on just updating a bunch of values in the game itself and then uploading an entirely new build to itch every day. But there's actually a lot of steps in this process that could go wrong, and you know, I want things to be as relatively foolproof as possible. So I set up a Unity remote config service, which lets the game download values from a server, which I can update in a dashboard. I'm still punching values in manually here, but at least I don't have to upload an entirely new binary every time to itch. Next, I set up a spreadsheet with a custom JSON exporter. This means I can just paste values into the spreadsheet and then export the data in a format that can be read by the game. Then I just converted the whole game structure to use this JSON file to drive it, that it downloads from the server. And amazingly, this all only took about an hour until I uploaded the build to itch. The next 5 hours were an excruciating game of whack-a-mole as I tried to diagnose what was going wrong, hunting through Unity forums, and then eventually I found the culprit, which was literally just a "Are you online?" check. So I guess we'll just delete that, and it works. And I'm sure there'll be absolutely no unintended consequences from this. So each day the process is update what day we're up to, update the number of comments, export the name list from Patreon into the sheet, export the sheet into a JSON file, paste the JSON file into the remote config, publish, and boom, the game is updated as if by magic. I mean, it's hardly the most sophisticated system in the world, but considering I did it as part of a project that only took 7 days, I'm pretty pleased. And now that's my side of the deal all done. The rest of it is now up to you to start adding enemies into the game. I have no idea what's gonna happen here. Like I mentioned before, it could be that like there's barely any comments and then the game's really weirdly easy. The video could do really well and then you're just gonna like break the game completely. I'm excited to find out. I spent a bit of time trying to like pre-balance the game based on historical data from previous videos, but I think the chances that it comes out well balanced are pretty minimal. But again, that's all part of the fun. But yeah, that's basically it. Thank you everyone for an amazing first 12 months on YouTube. I'm really deeply grateful and really excited to see where we are in another 12 months. By then, I should have at least one full proper game out on Steam as well, which is really exciting. So definitely wishlist that as well. Find the link for Searchrock down in the description below. You can play it for free in your browser right now. And yeah, thank you very much.